Hi everybody, and welcome to the Leading Edge Detailing, Supra Racing channel or Supra Track Day channel. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a review about the counter space garage brake pads which I recently installed in my car. It's going to be a short and sweet video, but I think it's going to be fairly informative because I had a few interesting findings about the pads. Now, in terms of brake pad feel and all that, when you're inside the car, they felt really good. There was no brake fade, the brake fluid stayed nice and cool, the car decelerated very nicely, and at the moment they're very quiet, but I'm sure they'll start squealing up sooner or later. And as with all track day pads, they're probably not going to be the most gentle on the rotors, but that's not the purpose of this video, because you would expect expensive good brake pads to be good in terms of driver feel. I did find something very interesting when I was looking at the data, and one of the reasons why I was looking at the data is the car felt very different. I was finding that I was not used to the car anymore, and I thought that would have been because of the rake, which we increased the rear ride height accidentally by 10 millimeters instead of 3 millimeters. But looking at the data, I think there was a little bit more to do with the brake pad as well. So I'm going to switch the screen to my laptop and explain what pads I have and show you the data that I found. And we are working in the shop today, so let's flip the camera over so you can see what's going on. Beautiful GT2 RS, Mercedes coming in. So there is a little bit of work happening today, so please excuse the sound and noise. But let's switch to the screen with the laptop, and I'll go through what pads I have, why they were recommended, and the data. So let's see if we can have no microphone on the laptop. All right, record. So we are recording on the laptop screen. So the pads that I have been recommended by Counter Space Garage CSG is the C21 on the front and the C11 on the rear. Very aggressive brake pads, and especially the rear, which we can go to the friction chart. So the C21 is their most aggressive brake pad, which they recommend for sprints and racing and suitable for very grippy tires. The C11 are also very strong on the rear, and the reason they recommended the C11 is because I have a VRS rear wing, which they said that I should be able to get more braking power from the rear because of the downforce, which when they recommended that to me, I wasn't really taking much note of it, but when you look at the data, it's probably the best way to explain it. Now again, that's the C21 and the C11 up here, and if we go to the compound comparison, the C21 has the highest friction, and the C11 for the rear has also the highest friction. So they're pretty much the most aggressive pads they have that work with very high temperature range, and they're designed for slicks to high grip R compound. We're comparing the data versus, so the tires that were used in the last track day were the Yokohama AO52s, and we're comparing this to Hawk DTC 60 brake pads, as well as Hankook Z221 soft semi-slicks. So my personal best with the Supra at Sydney Motorsport Park GP is a 140.5, and on Tuesday I managed to do a 141.3. A few differences with the car being the rear rake, the brake pads, and the tires. So again, 140.5 on Hankook Z221 soft semi-slicks, and then the 141.3 is the Yokohama AO52 tires. On the 140.5, I had Hawk DTC 60 pads on the front with Surco S88 pads on the rear, which are more of a street pad. And on the 141.3, I had the Counter Space Garage pads. Now let's have a look through the data. So as we go down the main straight, the car had the same top speed, so 230 kilometers an hour. And then you could see straight away on the braking zone, I have already scrubbed off with the new pads, you know, getting up to 8 kilometers an hour at the same braking point. That's all done subconsciously, and then lifting off and then apexing at almost the same speed, probably 1 kilometer an hour different or faster with the new pads. So you could straight away see, especially, where are we, lateral, longitudinal. So you can see here, this is the G force for the deceleration. So almost every single braking marker, I'm getting 0.1 to 0.2 more G-force and deceleration under brakes. So even this right here is 0.3 G-force more. Over here again, so 0.3 to 0.4, and here is just a little bit of a different braking marker. So immediately you see that every heavy braking zone, the counter space garage pads are generating more deceleration. You see that as well, which for me didn't play out really well because I'm not used to the new brake pads and ended up losing time, where I'm slowing down from about 206 kilometers an hour from turn 1 to turn 2. Same braking marker, same speed, but by the time the braking is almost done, I have slowed down probably about, where are we, 10 kilometers an hour more with the counter space garage pads as opposed to the Hawk pads and the Circo pads, which just shows you that these pads are much more aggressive and provide much better stopping power. Unfortunately for me, that also resulted in 0.3 seconds of time lost in the braking zone because I overslowed and ended up not being able to do the corners as well as I should have been able to do. And it's a trend you see in almost every braking zone where the car's just decelerating heavier. So where are we? This is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the braking zone for turn 4. Again, scrubbing off about 15 kilometers an hour more. So in terms of brake pad review, you can see here again as well, scrubbing off, where are we? But well over 10 kilometers an hour more. So in terms of brake pad review, in terms of feel, when I was driving the car, both the old and the new pads felt the same, but when you look at the data, you can just see that the counter space garage pads are generating considerably more braking and stopping power, which I need to get used to, but as a tool or as a modification to the car, I think it was money well spent. Now, they are certainly on the expensive side. They definitely will stop the recording for the laptop. They are most certainly not a cheap pad. They're fairly expensive, especially when you're shipping them to Australia and factoring in $200 US in shipping cost for a set of brake pads and also the exchange rate. But they barely wore out. They generated very little heat. So Counter Space Garage did supply me with some temperature stickers to put onto the caliper. The caliper didn't reach 200 degrees Celsius. So, and I think that also translated to the tire pressure that I was not seeing increase at the track, where normally I start my tires on 25 psi cold and get them up to about 34, 33 hot, then bleed them back down to 32. This time around, when I started my tire pressure at 25 psi, I didn't even reach 30. And I ended up, by the second session, borrowing a friend's compressor and pumping them by a couple of psi up. So I think the increased braking performance, maybe combined with the increased cooling because the pads are a little bit thicker being new, didn't translate into more temperature or the normal temperature that I would get through the wheel and then into the tire. So hopefully this quick review has been informative. If you're looking at the brake pads, I do suggest getting them. I just wish that they make them a little bit more affordable. But overall, can't fault the brake pads, performed flawlessly. And as you saw from the data, there was a higher performance in deceleration despite the AO52 not being as grippy as a soft Z221. So I can only imagine that the braking will be even better on a soft Z221 semi-slick. If you have any comments, please feel free to shoot them through. Please like and subscribe, and in terms of customer service, Counter Space Garage were more than friendly and helpful to recommend the brake pads for me, and they were very quick to come back with answers. So customer service, 10 out of 10, shipping, 10 out of 10. Very good company to deal with. So thank you again, and please subscribe for more videos.